Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. In the studio, waiting to be profiled, is Rae Roth and sculptor Richard Oginz. Perfume creator Rae Roth was born in South Dakota, but moved around a lot with her family till she settled in Iowa at the age of 15. She went back to the University of Iowa. Then she moved to Northern California to attend California College of the Arts and Crafts. What were you planning to do in CCAC?
Well, I planned to, and I did get a degree in design. So I studied graphic design, and then I worked for many years as a graphic designer.
Well, you spent a lot of time doing graphic designs, but one of the really big jobs, I think, is when you went in-house with Esprit, which was the beginning of California-known ready-to-wear, I guess you'd say, or was it specially designed? What would you call that company?
Well, I think Esprit was a really unusual company in that the product they made, it wasn't so much that was unique, but the image they created for the company was very unique. And it was a really good example of the couple that owned the company, Doug and Susie Tompkins, really understood the power of image and building a brand and that kind of thing. And I was very lucky to work for them in the years when they were really, really hot and was really successful. And
what did you do exactly? What does a graphic designer do for a big company like that?
Well, I was the art director for the company, and I also managed the graphic design studio. So we designed catalogs and the mail order catalogs, the advertising, the shopping bags, all of that. And it was a great time. I really learned a lot when I worked there.
Did you choose the colors and
yes,
everything like that?
Everything.
How does a person take total control of something like that?
Well, the unique thing about Esprit, and I think most really successful companies, which I am hoping to do with my company now, you have a vision. If you have a vision of who your company is and what you want it to be, and you really pursue that, and you do your very best to surround yourself with people who have the same aesthetic, the same work ethic, that what you can achieve is really remarkable. And I looked for that in creating the perfume, to work with people that were willing to work with a very small company, just me, and it's been really a challenge.
Well, what the company we're talking about is a perfume creation company. I mean, you're creating a perfume, and people who create perfumes, as far as the people I know who have created perfumes, have always been someone with a name.
Yes.
Say a designer gets to create a perfume called Versace or Thierry Mugler or Dior or whatever.
Right.
And who knows Rae Roth?
Well, well, that's absolutely true. And the reality is that behind all of these designer names, they always hire. The perfume world is really dominated by about 5 huge companies that create perfumes for people. You go to them and they create something. And it actually didn't used to be that way. It used to be, years ago, it was much more of a creative the creative process is very much a part of making a perfume.
But when you have a name, you're reflecting what that person does. You're reflecting the clothing line. Usually, right? Isn't it usually the clothing line?
Well, that's true. And it is people, but I felt that just in being a real lover of perfume all my life, that a few years ago when I decided that if I could take something and make it from start to finish, create it, package it, everything, what would it be? And for me, it would be perfume because it's something I've always loved, and I knew quite a lot about it, and I began studying about it, studying the making of perfume, and ordering oils from France, and but I felt that it was still possible to make a very refined, very high quality perfume for American women who are sophisticated, who don't need the reassurance of buying a designer name.
A designer name,
that they would respond to a product that is made with real passion and with real integrity, that is really authentic, that it is the best quality, it's as good a quality as any of the other big designer brands.
But how do you make it personal? I mean, we're talking now that a woman has to go in and depend on something that she believes in. So how can you make it your personal type of scent? How did you choose a scent?
You mean the inspirations for the perfumes? Well, I live in San Francisco, and I've lived there for most of my life now, and I love San Francisco. And you get when you create something, you get your inspiration from someplace. And for me, the three perfumes were inspired by various aspects of the city. Eau Illuminée is really fresh and aromatic, and it's really about the luminosity of the city, the light, the morning air. It's really easy to wear, and it's lavender, basil, my brain is going, lavender, basil, tonka bean, vanilla, wild aromatic herbs in the mid-notes.
And then, so that's one of them. Then there's another one that's called...
the Amoureuse is in the back.
Amoureuse, yes.
And that one is, in San Francisco we have trees that grow in the city that are planted in quite a few neighborhoods just along the streets. And they have a little white flower that blooms off and on throughout the year. And I've always loved the perfume, so I recreated that scent. And it has top notes of tangerine and cardamom, middle notes of French tuberose, French jasmine, ginger lily, and base notes of, sandalwood, cedar moss, and honey. So it's very feminine, it's very romantic, it's very elegant. I had a man come up to me in a wine shop and ask me what my perfume was, and I told him it was something I was making and it was just finished. And he said, "Oh my gosh, it's intoxicating. I just wanted to follow you out of the store." So I thought, okay, this one is really done.
This one's done. But this is another thing that you talk about, all these top notes, middle notes that you have to study. And you didn't do that in San Francisco.
No, how the creative process went for me is I blended, I had these very specific ideas of what the perfumes were going to be. And I started ordering oils from France and blending.
Oh, you did?
I did.
On your own?
Yes, I did that, and I was still doing the graphic design. And I did that for about 3 years, and then I got to a point where I realized that I wanted to make a really fine, really refined perfume. And in order to do that, I really needed to work with someone that had an extensive background. So I wrote to a French family in the south of France, the Runitska family, which are very renowned. I just went for the top, and I told them who I was, what I wanted to make, that this was something for sophisticated American women, that there are many of us, and they were impressed with my passion and my enthusiasm and my courage for wanting to do something like this in a world. I mean, the perfume world is pretty competitive.
That's what I would think.
Rather daunting, prospect.
That's what I would think, because one of the things that when I first talked to you about this, I said, oh, did you design the bottle? And you said, no, because if most dress designers have a lot of money behind them, and they
Right.
design a bottle that also reflects what they are, and it has to be different from everything else.
Right.
But you didn't design this bottle.
No, the bottle is a extremely lovely bottle. It's a very high quality French bottle that is called in the business a stock bottle.
Stock. So you just went and picked out a bottle.
But the packaging, the labels are engraved, and the paper I imported from a very small mill in the Black Forest that is the oldest paper making company in Europe. So it's very fine, it's very subtle, the colors, but I think very elegant. And I'm a designer, so I knew how to do that in my sleep. That was easy.
Drawn from your background,
Yeah,
right? But one thing you said, you had to pick the pump.
Yes.
You had to pick the cap.
Yeah, it's not like you just go to someone and all the vendors they're people that make bottles, there are people that make pumps, there are people that make caps, there are people.
You have to put them all together?
And I had to research all of that and, manage the coordination of the components coming, and which I knew from, I've been a project manager, so, that was a different aspect of the creative process. But
So it seems like all of it was pretty easy for you to do, because you'd done all of this before, and you came up with a new perfume called Del Rey Parfum.
right, Parfum Del Rey, and it wasn't. It was, it was challenging in ways I never could have known. Just like any time you do something, and people's, it's going to be hard, and there'll be ups and downs, but things that were just in ways I wouldn't have expected.
I think the most exciting thing, most difficult thing would have been to pick the scent.
Well,
And so
that was probably it was the funnest part.
that was
of
the
doing
most
it, of
fun, and the
course,
other part
yes.
was what you could do the best.
And going to the south of France and working with this family who make perfume for Hermès and Dior, and so and part of the reason why I was so thrilled that they would make the concentrates for me, because I knew that because of their background and their connections that they had access to the very best ingredients in the world.
Oh, I
and
see.
someone new to the business like myself, it would be very, very hard for me to guarantee the quality of the rose oil and the tuberose and so on. So I had that reassurance. And they've been wonderful and really lovely, and
So that was a good pairing.
Oh,
and
it
we're
was
glad we're glad you were with us today.
Thank
I
you.
know when you have a quality perfume like this, you will be finding them in quality all around. Women of quality will be
Yes, I've
smelling like Illuminé. What is it?
Eau Illuminée.
Oh, Illuminé.
Yes.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Del Rey Roth. And don't go away. We'll be right back with sculptor Richard Oginz, who did this beautiful piece on the set, and this other one behind Del Rey. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back. I'm with artist Richard Oginz, who was born and raised on the East Coast. He earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Tyler School of Art, which is at Temple University in Philadelphia, and a Master's from the University of Wisconsin. He spent time at the University of Leeds in England on a fellowship, and he's a working artist who's had exhibitions all across the United States. In 1979, Rick was named the Young Talent Award from Los Angeles County Museum of Art. I don't think they give that anymore, do they?
No, they don't.
And I love that award. I
Yeah.
thought it was so great each year to find the young talent in the city. And prior to that, you had a Ford Foundation grant, a couple of them actually, for teaching. So let's get into your experiences from teaching, maybe, because did you go right from college into teaching?
Yeah, I kind of did. I was a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And one of my professors there was visiting from England, and he offered me a part-time teaching job at a college in London.
It Leeds. It's in.
Well, no, actually, this was in London. Leeds is in Yorkshire.
In Yorkshire, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
you went to London.
Yeah. So that was in 1968, and I went to London. I lived there for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and after teaching in London for a few years, I was offered a fellowship at the University of Leeds, which wasn't actually a teaching fellowship. I was just like an artist in residence.
But you were pretty young. I mean, how did they accept you?
Well, it was difficult because that was 1968 was the height of the student movement.
Oh, right.
And the art college that I went to was a very politically active campus. In fact, the campus when I first arrived was closed because of a sit-in.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I was able just to work in my studio, and they paid me, and I thought it was great. And then finally I started teaching there, and because I was an American with a, you know, like a strong American accent, the students thought I was from the FBI or the CIA.
Is that right?
Yeah, and
like spying on them?
Yes,
They were
exactly.
sitting in, and you
Yeah.
were there spying on
And
them.
the funny thing is that I was so young. I was like, you know, just about their age, like I don't
That's
know,
what I would
22,
think.
something like that.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
And yeah, and I lived in England for 8 years. I taught in a few different schools. It was a very exciting time.
Did
England right then?
Did actually teaching in England influence your work when you came back to the United States?
Yeah, being in England influenced. I don't know if it was teaching, but just certainly being in England. And I think the thing that that was so important for me was the difference in scale. That everything was smaller, you know, in England. Cars were smaller, streets were smaller.
In that regard.
The city was tighter.
But the monuments were big.
Monuments were big.
Right.
And the landscape, and you know, there's hardly an English visual artist that's not profoundly involved in the landscape. And I found myself very involved in the landscape.
But you were figurative. You were a figurative painter, I guess, when you came out of school.
Sculptor, yeah.
Sculptor.
Well, when I came out of
sculptor, right.
school, and for the first 5 years of my career, my work was abstract.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, it was.
And what materials were you using?
I was using metals, woods, you know.
So you've always used that kind of organic
yeah,
thing?
I've used a lot of different, I've always kind of used a lot of different materials. I've never, I mean, I've kind of developed a kind of level of craft just on my own, but I never really thought of myself as a craftsman.
That's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, because when you do something like this, does it fall into the realm of arts and crafts, or does it fall into the realm of fine art, and where does it, you know, stop or start?
Yeah, well, it starts in fine arts, and I think it pretty much stays there. Although, you know,
But in your career.
Yeah, in my career, mostly in fine arts, but you know, I've made a lot of functional things. Just, you know, just in my studio, which is I've always lived and worked in the same place.
But would you say this is functional?
Yeah.
Because they're little drawers.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, and
open those again, Rick.
It's drawers, and yeah, and they open and it fits.
So you could put them on a...
I especially like
But look at the sides.
The back of it. With the,
all the way around.
In case there's any confusion as to which is the front and the back, you can see.
This is the front with the drawers, and this is the, whoops, turn it all the way around again. And this is the back side.
Yeah. Can we put it here?
Sure.
And so I've made tables, I've made a few chairs, mostly tables.
But this,
I made a series of cabinets like this.
Cabinets, are they crafts?
Yeah. It's
They
kind of
are.
a craft. But fits Yeah, I've shown these. I had an exhibition at the Gallery of Functional Art. I've had a few exhibitions there, and you know, that fits in as artist-made furniture.
You know, we talk about the arts and crafts, and you talk, and we're saying fine arts, but a lot of people like Okulik and Arnaldi and Herms,
Yes.
and some of those people, Oginz,
Yeah.
work in wood,
Yeah.
but they work in a fine art realm.
Yeah. I think I've always thought that the difference between the crafts and the arts is that in crafts you have a material and you look for ideas for it.
In crafts.
In crafts. And in arts, you have an idea and you look for a material for it. In
I
other words,
see.
the idea comes first.
I see, I see.
And then you find a material that's going to express that idea.
That's an interesting.
That's how, I don't know if it's really a perfect rule, but that's kind of a way of thinking about it anyway.
But so, if you're going to do something that's a fine art, you've come up with an idea and you go, oh, I'm going to use metal for this.
Exactly. And that's
And is that what you do?
I do, and I use that's why I use a lot of different materials. I'm not married to just one
I see.
material.
What do you prefer?
Well, I'm kind of set up in my shop. You know, I only have so many resources, and I'm kind of set up for wood. And oftentimes, even if a project ends up in another material, it will start out in wood.
I see. And
I
then
also,
you can transfer. You did some elevator doors in a state building in downtown Los Angeles.
That's right.
Which was a commission.
Yeah.
But that's not in wood, is it?
No, that's stainless steel.
So did it start with wood?
Well, I was going to say, another thing that I do a lot of is I do a lot of drawing, and I always have. And
But architectural drawing, I bet.
no, well, like this.
Was it? Oh, I see. I see.
other words-
I see.
You know, and on paper and on other materials, and the piece that we're talking about downtown is it started out as a drawing, and it ended up as a kind of permanent, very permanent drawing etched into stainless steel. The line is etched into stainless steel.
I see.
Here, like I cut the line into the wood, and then I color the cut with the yellow stain.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So that it's graphic, it's drawing, but it always has a kind of tactile quality. And I always like make things that
you can
be touched.
touch and feel.
Yeah.
Ah.
Even like when I'm doing drawings on paper, which I do quite a bit, and I've exhibited a lot of drawings on paper. At the LA County Museum of Art did a retrospective of drawings in 1997 of my drawings. Yeah, and but when I draw on paper, like I push so hard with the pencil that I kind of emboss the paper a little bit, so that you actually can feel the line.
So you can see there's a movement to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's what happens on this too.
Yeah.
There's a movement.
yeah.
And I can see how that could translate. Of course, you give the drawing to somebody on stainless steel and they translate it into
Yeah.
the elevator doors.
That's right.
But the one thing that reminds me, I love when the buildings decorate their doors and their pillars,
Yes.
because it's so reminiscent of old, like turn of the century,
Yeah.
where every building had elevator doors that were
Right.
decorated.
Every surface needed to be articulated.
It's great, and that's the kind of work that looks like you would do.
Yeah, there's a little bit of the horror vacuum, you know, the fear of emptiness.
Yeah, is that, yeah.
You know, that we have a kind of love of emptiness in modern contemporary art. You know, like the blank, the openness.
Canvas, yeah.
But it's always, I guess, it makes me a little nervous, and you know, like. There's
When we talked
a lot
about
going on
in
all
your
of my
studio,
work.
I mean, we're talking about kinetic. I'm going to move this
Yeah.
carefully because it just fits on it. But see how the clouds, I don't know if they're clouds or not, but
Waves.
the clouds, the waves
Yeah.
move back and forth. So you made all the wheels, is all this wood laminated?
Yes, laminated and fabricated. Yes.
And then painted?
And
I love
painted,
the way it
yeah.
goes back and forth. It looks so great. It's like
Yeah.
a big explosion on the screen.
This piece is about 10 years old.
That, and watching it on the screen as we moved it,
Yeah.
it kind of brings me to stage work. Have you done stage?
No, I haven't, Joan, but I really would love to. When I was making these, I really envisioned, making one that is, like 15 feet tall.
Yeah,
And
that's what I could see.
in an
This is so
opera,
heavy.
and a certain scene comes on, and three or four men push it across the stage, and it's
Very
animated.
Japanese.
Yeah.
But instead of using fabric like
Right.
they use on stage, you use your wood
Right.
moving. And
Right.
you could build these huge, oh, it sounds
Yeah.
great. What
Would
can
it
we
be-
do it
We
in?
should do that. I did do I've done several of these similar type of sculpture, but with fire. I've drawn fire a lot.
That would be
I
so
like
great too.
trying to render fire and water, natural phenomena. And with fire, I made one that's about the size of a small car, about the size of a Honda.
Is that right?
And you can push it. Yeah.
That sounds great. What I'm noticing while we're looking at this, the pegs are all wood. You've
Yeah.
like carved the pegs and put them in.
I wanted to make something that you would that would celebrate the mechanical age. We don't live in the mechanical age anymore, but there's a lot of mechanics around that move us around. But I've always been fascinated with like the interior parts
It looks-
of an engine. So I wanted to make some pieces.
But they're so artistic too, the way they're cut and
Yeah.
carefully watched.
Yeah.
Well, if you take this to a class to show your class, do they get inspired by something like this? Would they want to do this?
Yeah, I tend not to do that with my students until later
I
in the
see.
class. Towards the end, I like to show them my work. I like to work in the class, and I like them to see me working, but I don't like to show them. I mean, if I'm having an exhibition in town, I like them to see it, but I don't like to kind of, sometimes when you make too strong an impression and they end up doing,
I see. They follow what you're doing instead of using their own creativity?
Exactly.
I said it right,
Exactly.
didn't I?
Yeah.
But I bet you must learn from your students as well.
Oh, absolutely. Every day. Yeah.
I remember talking to a dress designer once, and I said, why would you go down? Why would you teach at fashion school? And she said, my students teach me every day.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just that youth, being around young people.
Yeah, and also, I bet every artist has kind of a moment early in their life where a moment of transformation from being themselves to being what they're making, to
Yeah.
being totally absorbed in what they're making.
Yeah.
I mean, not just artists. I think everybody has
Yeah,
that at
and
some point in their life.
right.
And it's such a kind of amazing moment that like you look at your watch and you realize the afternoon has gone by.
I did it.
And I've been doing this.
And guess what? Our afternoon is gone. Our
has
evening
it
has gone
gone?
by. Our afternoon, our evening, our show is gone by.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick Oginz. And thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor.